From Studio 2A in Minneapolis, Minnesota, this is the Big Bucks Podcast, a program dedicated to game shows, current and past. And now, here's your host, JK.
Thank you, Ricky G. Welcome to the Big Bucks Podcast. I'm your host, JK. We have a lot to get to, so let's get you started. If you want to interact with the show, you can. There are several ways to do that. Follow us on Twitter at Big Bucks Podcast. You can send us a tweet. You can follow us there. Same with Facebook. Send us a message on Facebook at Big Bucks Podcast. We do have a YouTube page. We'll have some clips up over the next couple days. You can find us there at the Big Bucks Podcast. And, of course, you can email the show if you so choose. We'll read some of those emails later if we get those in the future. jksaysradio at gmail.com. jksaysradio at gmail.com. Thanks for coming back to our second episode of the Big Bucks Podcast. Let's get right into the latest news and game show happenings. Well, premiere dates are starting to pop up very soon. Jeopardy and Wheel, the Sony productions, are going to be hitting TV here in the next week or so. September 12th is the debut episode for both Wheel and Jeopardy. You can find those in syndication on your local affiliates. Check your times, check your listings. They are very weird here in Minneapolis. We get Jeopardy at 4:30 on our NBC affiliate, and then Wheel comes on at 6:30 on a CBS affiliate, so your mileage may vary as far as that goes. Jeopardy has announced that they're going to be doing a Alex Trebek tribute show on November 8th, so a lot of that news coming as that's going to kick off near the Tournament of Champions as well. So it's going to be an interesting year for Jeopardy as if it hasn't already been. Combining a little more Ken Jennings, maybe a little less Mayim Bialik. That's going to... it's been a divisive thing amongst fans considering the host, and we're not here to divide. We're here to try and unite game show fans. So whatever your thoughts are on them, I think Ken Jennings has done a great job personally. If he gets the permanent gig, we would not be upset here at the Big Bucks Podcast. So look for those on September 12th. We'll talk more Wheel momentarily. The Price is Right and Let's Make a Deal will follow on September 19th. Of course, CBS Daytime is just rocking when it comes to The Price is Right. They've always, not always, but for decades have been the number one rated show in daytime on CBS. And that's going to continue in season 51. Planned for, again, September 19th. And this will be Drew Carey's 15th anniversary. It'll be the start of his 16th season as the host. Can you believe that? That feels like it was yesterday that we saw Bob Barker's last hurrah. We saw Drew Carey come out and had that really rough season 36 and 37. But he has gotten it together, and CBS is certainly not hurting when it comes to The Price is Right. Let's Make a Deal returns for its 14th season, also on September 19th later on in the day, as Wayne Brady, who's done just a magnificent job. I don't think Wayne Brady gets enough credit for what he has done on Let's Make a Deal. My goodness. I'm not a big fan of Let's Make a Deal. Just there's so much luck involved. There's not a lot of skill games when it comes to Let's Make a Deal. But that's part of its allure, and if you're into that, that's fantastic because Wayne Brady's a ton of fun. Him and Jonathan Magnum, they do wonders. It's not made to be a comedy show, but they certainly help when it comes to a format that might not be universally praised, but it's very fun to watch when you do get around to that. They're going to be kicking off Fabulous Car Week, as it's been dubbed, courtesy of Deadline TV Insider anyway. Someone's going to have a chance to win $250,000 worth of luxury cars, and the next season will return with Mega Money Mondays, where contestants guaranteed to win $10,000. So stick around for that. Both The Price is Right and Let's Make a Deal have also committed to a number of primetime specials on CBS. And of course, The Price is Right at night did fantastic ratings-wise. It's a good filler for that first hour of primetime when it comes to to the CBS line of game shows. All right, so moving on, let's talk about Password. You want to talk about one of the big hits of the season, or of the summer season rather. How about Password? My goodness, the ratings have been good for Password. It is hosted by Keke Palmer. Jimmy Fallon is I'm not 100% certain, but he obviously was an integral part of bringing that show back. He did Password segments on The Tonight Show for years and continues to do that. But he is a guest, one of the celebrity guest players every single episode. And so far they've had numerous different celebrity pairings, such as, off the top of my head, Martin Short, J.B. Smoove was very recent. Who else? Heidi Klum, John Hamm, Chelsea Handler. She was great. My goodness, her comedy, it just rolls right off the tongue right there. She's a ton of fun. Meghan Trainor, that's the other one. Meghan Trainor was on. I never felt like she did all that well, but it's been a lot of fun seeing some of the contestants and these celebrities work to help those contestants get that money. Now, my thoughts on Password: it's a good show, but not a great show. And here's my problem: if you're a big fan of Jimmy Fallon, you're going to love this show. If you like Jimmy Fallon and think he's okay, he might get on your nerves a little bit, because I feel like he hijacks this show a little bit. If you do not like Jimmy Fallon, you might not like this show. I'm going to be honest with you. Keke Palmer is okay as host. I feel like there's a little less game than a typical Password fan or any word association game fan might like. Yes, it's still fun to watch, however. The entertainment value is strong enough for me that it is worth a watch. But there are things that bug me about it. Number one, the judging is atrocious. The judging is atrocious. I feel like they get away with just about anything, and you can say just about anything without actually saying the word. So it irks me in that regard. There's a lot of unnecessary, and you've always been allowed to do like head movements and that kind of thing, so you'll get that. But the fact that they allow rhyming words, the fact that they let them do gestures more than they should, even though there was a couple times where Keke warned them about it, but it was kind of tongue-in-cheek, it felt like. So in my opinion, the judging, just like the $100,000 pyramid, by the way, which is the judging in the winner's circle is bad. It's inconsistent at best, and I feel like that's what they get here. Another thing, Keke rereads the words sometimes on Passwords that have been given. It's not a big deal. It really isn't, but it is kind of annoying that the players have to do even less thinking for themselves. The scoring, it is best 2 out of 3 games played to a score of 15, with the starting word starting at 6 points. If that seems like a really low target, you would be correct. Again, there's so much filler, there's so much applause and smack talk back and forth between each correct word that there's just not enough time for enough gameplay. There's just not. And again, as someone who loves game shows and wants to see a lot of gameplay, you're not getting as much as you would expect here. So yeah, the games work out based on editing, but in the grand scheme of things, there's not as much gameplay as you would hope. The game is played for $25,000 if you make it to the bonus round. And here is where we see, again, like Pyramid, the best part of the game, the bonus round. They play alphabetics like they did in Password Plus and Super Password. And you get 10 words, a starting letter, and then 10 letters later, where you have to guess those passwords that start with that letter. The game works a little differently, and in fact, it's significantly easier to win that money. Because instead of just having one partner for 60 seconds, you get to utilize both partners for 30 seconds. And I know, it sounds like the same amount of time. But here's the thing, if you screw up in the first round, let's say you get three words, then you accidentally say the fourth word. Well, you're out that word for the duration of that 30 seconds. But now, for your second 30 seconds, they reinsert a word in that spot. So you have a chance to get it again. So you can still mess up a word and get it back later. Not only that, if the first celebrity cannot get a word that is given, the second celebrity is standing right there. They can come back to that word. They could figure it out and know it and just immediately say it when they get back to that letter. So there's a couple advantages right there. And again, $25,000 in prime time. It's not a lot of money, let's be honest here. And there is a scale when it comes to how much a game is played for and how serious the game is. $25,000, honestly, not that much. Match Game had the same thing, $25,000 when it was on with Alec Baldwin, $25,000 for the winner. Not a super serious game. It's made to be fun, and it is. In the grand scheme of things, this is a fun game to watch, and I will continue to watch it. I'm not going to shelf it like I have other shows. I'm looking at you, Generation Gap. And by the way, the bonus round. They want to give away money. Let's say you only get 7 of the 10 words. You get $1,000 a word for $7,000, but if you don't win the 25, they're going to give you an additional bonus round where you can double that $7,000 to 14 with a single word. A single password. You have to give the word, and the two celebrities converge for 30 seconds and try and discuss what that answer happens to be. It's fun. It doesn't take itself too seriously. The judging in the front game is very suspect, but it is still password, and I enjoy it very, very much. All right, that's our latest in-game show news. We'll have more as our show continues in the future, but for now, we're going to step aside and get you set to talk about Wheel of Fortune. Are you a big fan of Wheel of Fortune? I might make you a little upset here in the next few minutes. Just keep that in mind. We're going to talk about Wheel of Fortune. Is it good? Why not? What do I think of it? Stick around. This is the Big Bucks Podcast. Big Bucks Podcast rolls on. Welcome back to the show, everybody. Let's talk Wheel of Fortune, shall we? And as I mentioned before the break, we might lose some of you here because I'm going to have some not so kind things to say about a show that has been a staple of syndicated television for 40 years. Now, I don't want this to turn into a massive bashing of a show because there are qualities that I do like when it comes to Wheel, but I'm going to say some things that you may not like. Let's start with the pacing of the show. This has been something that has changed a little bit over the years. A lot of it not necessarily its own fault. Look, a syndicated half-hour show now is approximately 22 minutes, 21 to 22 minutes when it comes to actual time. The rest goes to commercials. That wasn't always the case when the show began. Other shows have had this time crunch as well. The Price is Right, notably, has seen this going from 53, 54 odd minutes now down to 42. And for a show that tries to maintain a certain format, this makes it difficult to do. So we have a pacing issue. To me, sometimes these puzzles just drag on and on and on. And again, not necessarily the fault of the show, that's just the way it's designed. And initially, it was a pretty good design. Well, now we have issues where the gameplay is just so familiar to some contestants, and it's just played the same way for the most part. Again, maybe not its problem, and maybe myself trying to watch it, I grow bored with it easily. It is what it is. But let's talk about the wheel itself. Why are we using less and less of the wheel as the seasons have progressed? If you've watched the show any time in the last decade or so, we have these toss-up puzzles. Let's talk about things that are unnecessary here. They immediately open the show with introducing Pat and Vanna. The first thing Pat says is grab those signal devices. We're going to have a $1,000 toss-up. This involves Vanis touching the board and starting a puzzle where letters are revealed one at a time to a puzzle. First person to buzz in to get it correct gets $1,000. And then Pat interviews that person, and they go to the right to interview the next three. Then they do, for some reason, another toss-up for $2,000 and control of the first round. Well, let's talk about that for a moment, shall we? Literally the only purpose of the first toss-up is to give you that $1,000 and be the first person Pat talks to. Because if you didn't just talk to you first, then it wouldn't be a toss-up now, would it? Because you have to win something other than the monetary value of the puzzle, right? So right there, we're deeming something completely pointless. Pat does his little quirks that may or may not be funny, usually aren't. And then we have that second toss-up, and now control goes to that player to start the game. And then they play a round, and it's played fine. Then they go to commercial. They come back for another round, usually the mystery round, and they do a prize puzzle round. Now, let's talk about the prize puzzle, shall we? This is my biggest problem with the show. So to go to the bonus round, you need to accumulate the most money on the show. In each round, you only get to keep that money if you win the round. If you do win the round, you have banked that money. That is set in stone, and you cannot lose it. So between toss-ups and the regular rounds, that is your money to keep. So let's say you win the first round, but everyone had money on the board. Only the player who solves that puzzle gets to keep that money. They keep the running totals after every round is over. At the end of the show, everyone gets to keep whatever money, prizes they've accumulated, and the highest total does go to the bonus round to play for, up to, technically up to $1 million, but usually up to $100,000. The prize puzzle involves a vacation, a trip, a week-long trip somewhere. And the puzzle itself usually has something to do with that prize. My absolute issue with the prize puzzle is that they give you that total and add it to your score at the end. And it is almost always valued between $7,000 and $11,000. To me, this is absurd. And if you watch a group of shows, I do not have an exact percentage for you. I'm sure someone does. It is almost exclusive that that player that wins the prize puzzle round will go to the bonus round. I cannot believe we're still doing this. I cannot believe we're putting such an emphasis on that round. To make that round worse, the person who goes first is at a massive advantage because of a space on the wheel called the express space. Let's talk about that for a moment. It is played exclusively during the prize puzzle round, and it is placed from a starting position where that first player has a very good chance of landing on it. The express space, and I don't know why you would ever choose not to use the express space, involves calling a consonant. If it's there, you get to board the express, like a train. You then call out any letter, vowels or consonants. Every consonant is worth $1,000. You can call vowels. You don't get anything for those. They do cost you $250. But as long as you put a letter on the board, you can continue playing. If you fail at any letter, you get a bankrupt. But you can then, of course, solve at any time, meaning once you know it, you just start filling in all the consonants. And you can rack up thousands of dollars, sometimes more than $10,000. And if you're the first spinner, and it's that prize puzzle, of course, you're going to win about $18,000 to $20,000 in that one round, something that is insurmountable for the most part. It is not fair. It is not good television. It is not good drama. And let's talk about the lack of suspense on this show. Once that happens, the game is essentially over. And again, it's not always over because the final spin sometimes produces that $5,000 space. That's when the game becomes exciting. But that's pretty rare. Now, the changes for Season 39 were extremely minimal. Possibly the biggest change made, there's two big changes made. One's the triple toss-up, which I haven't even discussed yet. The triple toss-up comes after the prize puzzle. It is 3 puzzles worth $2,000 apiece. Now, if you win all 3, you get $10,000. So maybe that helps balance out the score, in theory. But then they move on to the 4th round, which is typically pushing the show to its brink, the time limit. Usually, unless the first 3 puzzles went pretty quickly, usually you will hear that final spin bell as soon as round 4 starts. And that's when Pat would give the wheel a final spin. And in the past, that $5,000 space was out of his reach. He would never hit it on that first spin, at least for the last couple of seasons. And if he did hit it, it was usually because they had started the 4th round already. Or he felt frisky and wanted to spin it really, really hard. Now, another change that's been made is the contestants spin that final spin. Pat doesn't do it anymore. I'm fine with this. It's not a big deal. I don't think it takes away or adds any charm or anything to the show. But now, a contestant, theoretically, because they still put the $5,000 space in the same starting spot, depending where you are, red, yellow, or blue, you could conceivably hit that spot depending on how hard or light you spin it. So, in theory, that space could be landed on more. But really, there's just no suspense in this game either. Like, it's a tired format that continues to use puzzles that seem more and more ridiculous. If you want to make this game a little more challenging, and again, there are people so good at this game that get on the show, and it just becomes a slog to watch because it's played the same way. Let's talk about vowel prices, shall we? When this show first began, the price of vowels was $250, and that meant something because there were spaces on the wheel that were $75. It would be a big deal to hit a $1,000 space. $500 was a high-end space. So that vowel space meant something. Now, 40 years later, it still costs you $250 to buy a vowel. So why would you not buy multiple vowels after spinning the first time and putting something on the board? Most spaces are over $500. Get your E, get your A. Most puzzles are going to have that. If it's a what are you doing puzzle, it's going to have an I. Get those spaces taken care of. Get those vowels. Solve the puzzle. We talked last week about Family Feud game theory and how round 3 is the only, or rather, the 4th round, the triple round, is the only round that matters. Because it does. Here, the prize puzzle matters, but it's not exclusively weighted on that. You still have to not only solve puzzles and get money, but solve them to prevent other people from getting money. So anyway, that vowel price is exactly something I would change. I would up that thing to $1,000 if I were running the show. Now you have to think about what you're doing. You have to play as if, hey, I've got the money. I'm going to use that exclusively for vowels or whatever, because $250 is nothing in today's game, and it's extremely boring to watch when it comes to that. I think that would be a drastic change to the show format and change the strategy up a little bit. Now, the bonus round has kind of found its groove. That has changed tremendously over the years. In the past, and even in the first few seasons, you had to call 5 consonants and a vowel on a massive puzzle. Sometimes it would be big, sometimes it would be tiny. They have tinkered with the bonus round so much, and of course, a few years in, they decided, hey, we're just going to give you the same letters everyone's calling R, S, T, L, N, and the vowel E. And now you choose 3 additional and a vowel. But man, can they manipulate that bonus round. Oh my goodness. The bonus round can be manipulated so much It is typically 1, 2, maybe 3 words, depending on the category that you get to choose, by the way, now. And it's usually about 10 to 15 characters in length. But they can make them so difficult. They can make them just the most ridiculous puzzles imaginable. There was a great puzzle the other day that was earlier this year, like quart of goat milk for food and drink. Quart of goat milk? Who's guessing that? It's just, if you don't guess A or U, which most people aren't, I don't know. How do you even, I don't know. It's just, the A becomes important there. And my mistake, a lot of people are calling A, but other letters, like, you just don't know. You just don't know what you're going to get. Sometimes they make these extremely difficult, but sometimes it's very easy. It's very obvious what it is going in. And now knowing that you're playing for $40,000 at a minimum, I don't know. I'd like to see some of those values change a little bit, because between the low-end prize and the high-end prize, it's not as big of a difference as you'd like to see. $40,000 to $100,000. And again, we're not talking about the $1 million space being added. But the worst prize you can get, of course, is a car, because you usually have like an Audi or a BMW. It's usually priced below the minimum amount. So not only are you paying taxes on something that's not cash, you might be getting a tax bill for going on the show to win a car. The show is still running strong ratings-wise. It's about third in syndication, behind Feud and Jeopardy, and very closely trailing Jeopardy, by the way. But the big appeal of this show comes from essentially 2 things. 1, big wins, the occasional $100,000 or $1 million win, and sometimes it's accompanied by an amazing solve. Or 2, ridiculous answers from ridiculous attempts by contestants. Perhaps it was an extremely hard puzzle, or they said something they shouldn't. And this falls in line with bad judging, too, because there has been the occasion where the judging has been questioned by the fans on Twitter and all that. And before we sign off here and head to break, can we talk about the crossword puzzle? Can we get rid of that, please? That is a terrible, terrible puzzle. Crossword clue allows for essentially a category and 4 items associated with that category via like a crossword puzzle. When you solve, you have to say those 4 words. You cannot add the word "and." So you're not reading left to right either. That's the thing. That's what confuses people. I do not like that category for that reason. I know people are going to say he tells you not to add anything, but it's confusing for some people, and it's not that fun to watch anyway. Overall, I could do without Wheel. I typically don't watch it. I will catch it on YouTube. I will find those big moments, and that's really the gist of everything that I watch. So unless drastic changes are made to the format, this show's going to remain near the bottom of the list for me. All right, when we come back, we're going to talk bonus game from The Price is Right, our pricing game review. We're going to do a pricing game review every single episode of the Big Bucks podcast. Come on back. We'll talk bonus game, the second game ever introduced on The Price is Right. Stick around. Final segment of the Big Bucks podcast. JK here with you. Welcome in. Glad to have you. We are talking pricing game reviews for our last segment here as we talk bonus game. This is the second game to be introduced on The Price is Right. It was from day 1. It is still played to this day. So typically, 2 things happen. 1, the game is revealed first, which I love, by the way. I love seeing the turntable rotate around to show us the game before the host throws it to the announcer to tell them the prize. Or 2, they just simply tell you the prize, and it's usually preceded by a bonus worth $9,727. So the script has changed a bit recently, but that's okay. So bonus game shows you 4 windows. One of those windows, they're all unlit, so they're dark. But one behind them, when they illuminate the windows, one of them will say bonus. And your job is to find the window that contains the bonus. Now, each window has a small prize associated with it, usually 2 digits in length, sometimes 3. They'll read a description of the prize. They'll show you the price, but that's not the actual price. They're going to show you a price. Then you tell the host whether that prize is higher or lower than the price that has been given. If you're correct, they slide the prize over to the very left of the board. If you're wrong, they send it back to the right where it is hidden. After you have seen all 4 prizes, you are then shown where the bonus is. If that bonus is lit up under a prize that you answered correctly, higher or lower, you win the main prize for the game, or the bonus prize that was introduced first. It's a very simple game. There's nothing really about it that stands out as fantastic or terrible. It's a well-played, well-made game that incorporates pricing of other products in an effort to win a grand prize. Honestly, there hasn't been a lot of major playings of this game that really stand out. The first player to ever play it, his name was Paul Levine. He played it perfectly the very first time they played it on the show. I think he was the first contestant ever called down, actually, if you watch the original episode. But he played bonus game. And then on the 40th anniversary special in 2012, they brought him back to play. And they don't set up the games are set in the rotation, but he ended up getting up there again, and wouldn't you know it, played bonus game again. He played it perfectly again. Ended up winning a 72 Chevy Monte Carlo worth like $17,000. So that was cool. There have been contestants that have won all 4 bonuses, and obviously if you do that, you win the game. And of course, if you don't get any right, you don't win anything, obviously. But there's also been times where only one was guessed right, and that was the one. So other than that, nothing really stands out in this game. I like it as for what it is. It's not played a whole lot. It's played maybe 10 times a season. Honestly, I wouldn't change anything about it. Some people have suggested that, hey, they should, like Shell Game, just like Shell Game, you should be able to guess where the bonus is for an extra prize. Well, then what is exactly the difference between this and Shell Game, per se? You can't, the only difference would be then that you're playing it with shells, because the format is almost identical. So, no, I would not change that at all. I really wouldn't change anything about this game. I think it's played just fine. I do think Any Number is a better game, so we're going to slot that behind Any Number. So right now, our pricing game rankings are Any Number 1, Bonus Game 2. What are we going to do next week? We shall discuss that when we get there. We'll be back with another podcast, of course, next week, right here on the Big Bucks Podcast, so stick around for that. Thank you so much, everybody. We'd love to hear from you. If you have any thoughts about anything we've discussed today, hit us up on Twitter at Big Bucks Podcast, or you can email the show, jksaysradio@gmail.com, jksaysradio@gmail.com. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. We will see you next time. Goodbye, everybody.
This is Ricky G speaking for the Big Bucks Podcast, a JK Says production. Be sure to follow the show on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and anywhere you find podcasts.